Welcome to another episode of the Energy Perspectives podcast. I'm here today with a special guest, someone who is known to have fundamentally transformed the global gas and energy industry and is really the pioneer of LNG in the US, both for regas and liquefaction. Charif Souki, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here with us. Welcome.
Monika, it's great to be with you. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm looking forward to this conversation. It's been a while, and before we're talking about LNG and what you're up to these days, I would love to start out by asking your thoughts, your take on where we are. It's a pretty extraordinary moment in history and the energy world. The year started out with Venezuela, a little bit later Iran. Right now, the Strait of Hormuz is still closed. We're on 100 days or so, and there is an interesting realignment of alliances, US, Americas, GCC countries. What does all of this mean? What's your read, and what does it mean for energy?
So for me, after 3 months, the big surprise is with a disruption of that magnitude, both for energy in general, for oil in particular, and for LNG as well, is that the impact on global markets has been a lot more muted than everybody expected. And after 3 months, we are starting to get used to this and looking for reasons. I think one of the things that we all missed initially is the fact that the energy space got so big in the last 25 years with continued growth. And the fact that the players changed, especially in the last decade when the United States became the largest producer of everything from the largest importer of everything. Those two changes have changed the dynamics pretty spectacularly. And what we've seen now with the size of this market is there are some pretty basic things that have happened very quickly to help rebalance the markets on a global basis. The first one is all the superfluous demand is gone. As an example, does China need to buy 1 million barrels a day simply to put in storage? And the answer is no. It's a nice thing to have, but it wasn't an essential thing. That's gone. Was China, again, able to switch to different sources of energy? Yes, they could substitute some of the oil with coal for industrial processes. There's another 1 million that's gone. So in the first 3 months, we've seen 4 to 5 million barrels a day of demand disappear from things that really haven't hurt most countries. If you're unlucky enough to be Bangladesh or Pakistan, you were hurt. But most of the other countries were able to adjust to this. At the same time, the production, as it grew, became a little bit less efficient. So can you switch from one field to another or one refinery to another? Can you optimize better when you get to that size? And the answer is yes. So we've seen an increase of 2 million barrels a day that we didn't expect hit the market. Then logistics. So pipelines in the Middle East that were operating at a percentage of capacity all of a sudden got filled up. Storage that was not necessary all of a sudden got used up. So we've adjusted a lot better, and instead of seeing $150 or $200 a barrel for oil prices, we saw somewhere around $100, fluctuating with the news from 90 to 110, but it's very manageable for the global economy. So at the moment, the impact is much more muted than we would have expected. Will it last? That's the big question. I don't think it's going to impact the Americas, because one of the things that have happened is the Americas from Alaska to Argentina in the last 25 have doubled their oil production from 20 million barrels a day to 40 million barrels a day. Oil as a percentage of global energy has decreased. If I put all of this into the picture, the North and South American continents will be less affected than other places in the world. So, but this still remains to be seen. It's too soon to really have an opinion and to count on it. But at the moment, I think it is not an energy crisis. It is an oil disruption. It has not migrated to coal or to electricity or to gas.
Despite some
And
LNG flows that are not coming from Qatar and other places.
well, the same thing that has happened in oil has happened in LNG as well. The market, because of the introduction of the US into the LNG market in 10 years, as you and I are familiar since we lived it. Since your husband, Octavio, created Cameron, and I created Sabine Pass and Corpus Christi, the market has changed pretty dramatically. We've gone from 10 years ago, when the first cargo left the United States, to 140 million tons today. That's enormous. That's like 25% of global LNG.
So the
we
current
can,
situation would be quite different without US LNG right now.
it would be terrifying if we didn't have US oil and US LNG in the picture today. And the LNG market is more pronounced because American LNG is a lot more flexible than global LNG. We basically don't sell more than 85% of our capacity on long-term contracts. And we also have the ability to operate for discrete periods of times, not for very long, but at 110% of nameplate capacity. So we have a 25% built-in flexibility in the system. Which the rest of the world didn't used to have. So for us, at 140 million tons today, it means that we can swing 30 million tons without a lot of effort. And we saw that in the first quarter of this year, where all of a sudden we were operating at better than nameplate in the United States.
How do you see the role of LNG for the future? Not just from a commodity perspective, but in terms of we're looking at net zero commitments in Europe. We're looking at just an evolving energy landscape. How do you see LNG going forward and its importance?
I think, look, first, you know my position on this because we've talked about it many times in the past. I think net zero commitments is a nice luxury to have if you're not trying to put out fires everywhere. When you have to feed your people or to make sure they're hot or to make sure that they have enough AC or even enough electricity, because 1 billion people around the world don't have electricity, you're not thinking about what net zero or things like this. And now that Europe has its own problems, they're not thinking about net zero as much as they were 3 or 4 years ago. So I think the nature of the LNG business has changed dramatically. LNG has gone from being a point-to-point destination kind of trade to a true commodity. LNG is today one of the top 5 traded commodities on the global basis. And a true commodity, the main issue is to be the low-cost molecule on the water. You want to be in the top quartile in order to be competitive through all the cycles. We have graduated from being a replacement for fuel and power generation on a global basis, where you compared yourself to oil and electricity produced by oil. And if you beat oil, you're in good shape. To now being a true commodity where you have to maximize the value of your molecule. So what you need to do is to be low cost on the water. So where the LNG business was primarily designed for utilities to improve their cost structure, it is today designed for producers looking for a market for their molecules. And I don't think the industry has absorbed this reality today. So when you're a traded commodity with the kind of liquidity we now have, with about 400 cargoes full of LNG at any given point, about a TCF and a half of floating storage, with 20 cargoes for sale every day, where you can pick up a phone and make a call and say, I'll pay you more, $1 or $2 more for your cargo. Will you sell it to me? And you probably have a cargo at any given time that's not too far from you. The imperative on making sure that you're not going to miss the molecules has gone. It is now, where can I get my cheapest natural gas? And my choices are pretty extensive today as a consumer. I can do gas, I can go do LNG, and I can do switching to coal or switching to renewables. So I am going to look at my portfolio and say, I don't really need to get into a long-term contract. There is enough liquidity in everything. The burden is now on the owner of the molecule. Do I need to sell my molecule? And can I get it on the water and beat all the other options that there are for the consumers around the world?
Talking about picking up the phone, though, and paying more for the molecule, there is a little bit of a question of how does LNG, how secure of an energy source is it for places like Bangladesh or places that just can't pay as much for the LNG? Is there a little bit of an issue of it goes to the wealthiest nations and those who can pay the most for it, as we saw, for example, during COVID?
Absolutely. It's a real issue, and the world has to deal with it. And it's probably going to be up to the producers to decide what they want to do, or to the global institutions to come up with a system in order to allow countries like Bangladesh and Pakistan, that primary need for them is to produce fertilizers. And if they don't produce fertilizers, they can't feed their people. It's existential. It's not a nice to have. So yes, absolutely, it's a real issue. And if the molecules are too expensive, it is going to be very, very punitive for countries like this. However, the molecules exist, and the infrastructure is difficult to build, but the molecules exist. And I don't see any slowdown in the US LNG picture. I mean, we're at 140 million tons. By the end of this decade, we'll be at 250 million tons. And every day you hear of another project that is reaching FID, sometimes in spite of common sense. How can you make it? We understand what it takes to build one of these things, and people are finally being realistic about the cost of construction. In the United States, we have infinite resources almost. We have 3 major basins that are world-class, all of them, from Appalachia to Haynesville to Permian Basin. We have molecules that can be on the water very cheaply. But we need the infrastructure, 1, to transport it domestically, and 2, to be able to liquefy it. Now, paradoxically, the one thing that I thought was the most difficult, the liquefaction, is being built with the most aggressively, which I really don't understand, but it's happening. Yeah. So it doesn't matter if I understand or not, it's there.
It's a pretty good time to be in LNG, and
it depends where you are. If you're the equity for one of these projects that are not charging enough for the service, no, it's not a good time. If you happen to have a contract at a subsidized price and you're a portfolio player, it's a great time. If you're an American natural gas producer and you're trying to solve the riddle about what do I do with all this gas, it's not a good time yet, but it could become a very good time if they know how to take advantage of the opportunity. We just opened up an export market for American gas producers that didn't exist 10 years ago. And your husband and I were part of the first wave that did that happen.
Well, let's talk about that. So you've been in this industry for 3 decades, give or take.
Yes.
I've been closely following for about almost 2 of those. You founded Cheniere Energy. You founded Tellurian. I was obviously particularly rooting for success there. And now you founded Phoenix Energy. Very different setup, very different structure from Tellurian. You've done different models, different ways. What are some of the learnings, and what's the Phoenix model?
So when I founded Cheniere, I had no idea uh, that the production existed in the United States. As you remember, in the first decade, what I was trying to do is import natural gas. And
Dan Jurgen wrote about that pretty well in the book.
yes. And because we looked at the picture in the United States, we were producing and reducing production every year, and our demand was increasing, and there was no way that we were going to be able to meet our demand. So we're going to need to import a lot more gas. So that was our first phase. And then the shale revolution happened between 2006 and 2010. And during these 4 years, everything changed. And all of a sudden, the production in the United States bottomed out somewhere around 45 BCF a day. And now we're producing 110 BCF a day 20 years later. So that was pretty spectacular. So our first iteration in the liquefaction business, we were learning. We had no idea what we were doing. But we understood that we needed to do something. The good luck for us was that the storage, the marine facility were all the same. So 90% of what we had built was usable both ways. The problem is that the refrigerator is much more expensive than the jacuzzi. So the cost factor was 10x what a regas facility would cost. And we had to figure it out. And Octavio and I used different business model, but kind of similar. And we were very realistic about what the cost to build one of these facility was. So we both ended up at a cost of service that was reasonable and that allowed the equity to make a decent return. So after that, you fast forward all the people who tried to emulate Octavio and I, and Michael Smith. So the next generation came in and said, you guys don't know what you were doing. You could have done it at half the cost. I said, well, I don't know how. And it turns out that it wasn't possible to do it at half the cost. In fact, it was going to cost twice as much because 10 years later, everything is more expensive. So now we've accepted that it costs roughly $1,000 to $1,100 a ton to build a facility that has its own implication on cost of capital. We have accepted that operating costs are going to run about $1 in MMBTU. And you put all of this together, and it's going to be pretty expensive to build this liquefaction capacity, but it's coming. And the one thing that people have not thought about is how do I source all of this gas? So when I started, the largest physical buyer of natural gas in the United States was Dow Chemical, and they were buying 700 million a day. Today, any LNG facility says I need 2 to 3 BCF a day. Well, you can't go and buy 2, 3 BCF a day without having a major impact on your local basis, on your local liquidity points. So you have to start planning way ahead of time. Where are my pipelines going to go? Where do I want to source my gas? If you're building a liquidity, if you're building a liquefaction facility, or if you're a producer, particularly in the Permian Basin, where your investment decision comes from oil prices, and the gas is something to deal with. And right now, they're not dealing with it very well because they have to pay to get rid of it. So if you're producing 6-7 million barrels a day, of which about 25 BCF is gas, and you don't have a market for that gas, you have an issue that you have to deal with. And this is what's happening today.
So what's the response of Phoenix Energy?
So for us, lessons learned. I mean, basically, you're not going to do everything. I don't really want to be very large anymore. I don't really build, I don't need to build liquefaction capacity. I think
And you're
we're
going to keep
now,
it private?
we're going to stay private. And I'm doing this mostly for my family and because also it's fun. I'm enjoying doing this. And it's a fascinating time to be in this business. I should be retired, as you pointed out before we started the, this program. But it's just too much fun, and it's too interesting right now. So since I have two kids who want to work with me in this space, I'm going to live vicariously through them for as long as I can do it. So, but I think essentially, it is going to be about the molecule. The American molecule, wherever you build, you produce it, is cheap and getting cheaper because technology keeps improving our ability to find more stuff and on a more attractive basis. And as I said, in the Permian Basin, the cost of the molecule is zero or negative.
Negative.
But you don't have to build the liquefaction capacity. It's going so fast. I don't think as a country we have the bandwidth to go faster. As I said, we're at 140 million tons in 10 years. We're going in the next 4 or 5 years to 250 million tons. And then by the end of the decade, 10 years from today, we'll be at 350 million tons. So it's just enormous. So I don't think we can do much more than what's happening now. There are some excellent sites that have been developed. They can have an inherent advantage when they want to put some expansion. So there's no point in competing with them. So we are going to stay small. We are going to take capacity on other people's place. Octavio and I, when we worked at Tellurian together, got to understand the Haynesville extremely well. We did a lot of work on the geology, on the resource, with the team that we had at Tellurian. The team is joining me. So we are going to be able to learn from all the things we learned at Tellurian in terms of how we continue to develop the resource that we built there. And we turned on a pretty attractive production base at Tellurian, Octavio and I. So we did a good job with this, and we have a pretty good platform. We understand how the Haynesville operates. The Permian is too complicated for us. And the Marcellus and the Appalachia in general is too far, so the infrastructure to bring the gas down is more questionable. But if you focus on the Haynesville and the Permian Basin, there's plenty enough gas. You just have to figure out what the pipelines are going to be needed to bring it to the coastline. And so we're going to be fully integrated, which is what we wanted to do at Tellurian. We're going to be small, which at Tellurian we were thinking still big.
Yeah.
Well, I never expected the second wave of LNG facilities to sell at the prices they agreed to sell on. So I didn't think this would be possible. And I didn't think that financial markets would fund that. But I was wrong. So there's a lot of construction of projects that really don't make any sense for the equity. The debt will be okay. The operating will be kind of marginal. But the equity will be affected. They will get not so good returns on equity. So I thought this would stop, but so far it hasn't stopped. It continues. So, but in that sense, for what I want to do, I can find capacity on somebody else's terminal. If they really want to sell capacity for $2.50, I'll take it. I don't know how to do it. But if somebody wants to give me that capacity for $2.50, I'm happy to take it. I don't have to go build a new facility.
Do you feel there is something still misunderstood about LNG outside of the key people in the industry who are actually doing it?
I think even some of the people who were doing it did not understand it. I think people looked at the record and said, "Oh, okay, Cameron was built for $600 or $700 a ton. Sabine Pass was built for $600 or $700 a ton. Corpus Christi ended up being slightly more expensive, but not more, not a lot more. So people said, okay, we can still do this, and maybe we can do even better than that. And it was not true at all. So now people are finally acknowledging that it costs $1,100 to $1,200 a ton, and some of the sites that are not so good are costing significantly more than this. So then your cost of capital becomes very difficult. But somehow they're putting it off. And as I said, we're going to have 350 million tons in the next decade. It's unbelievable. It's going to be close to 50% of global LNG. So we have the resource base. So if somebody's going to offer us capacity 2.5, we're happy to take it.
You mentioned your sons earlier, which reminded me, we have a lot of students listening to our podcasts and just are part of the Energy Dialogues network. You've had an incredible journey in the industry, and you're a risk taker. You have adapted and pivoted and reinvented the sector and what you are doing. As you look back at your career and what you've built, what do you think it takes to succeed in the industry, and what do you hope the next generation builds in the energy sector?
We live in a very, very unique country.
Yeah.
And we think about, could we have achieved what we did achieve in the United States in a different country? And the answer is probably not. So the ability of somebody with a good idea to come and do the homework and show the commitment and get his idea financed is pretty unique to this country. So my advice to your students is, don't be afraid of your ideas. And it's funny to say this because I'm looking at all the things that I don't understand, and artificial intelligence. Clearly, people are taking that kind of advice. So because they're doing things, they're financing ideas that I have no idea what they're doing. But it is the system in the United States that allows all of this to happen. We have almost perfect information. If you want to know who drilled what, it's in the record. If you want to know what the log of a particular oil well is so that you can compare, it's in the record. If you want to know pretty much anything, it's in the record and you can go find it. We don't hide anything, unlike other countries.
You can ask AI to find it too.
It's becoming easier to find it. You could always find it if you did the homework. Now AI does it for you in 30 seconds, which is insane. So everything is available. The information is available. So don't be afraid of your ideas, but also go do the work. Because without the work and without checking everything and questioning yourself all the time, and, I compare it to a musician who's playing a wonderful piece of music. And you think it's so beautiful, but can you reproduce it? Not without 6 hours a day. Okay. And it's the same thing. Okay, so if you're good at a certain thing and you do the homework and you do the work to support it, you'd succeed in this country.
Charif, it's been such a pleasure to have you on today's podcast. Wishing you much success with the new venture, third venture. I never would bet that it's your last one, and I was right so far. So we'll see how it goes, but we're gonna follow closely as always.
Very good, Monika.
Thank you, Charif.